myth, legend, and folklore surround the LBL. What exactly is it, though, that we experience when we go there? What is it that is at the root of all of the mystery of the land between the lakes? Is it the energy left there from all of the horrible experiences of clearing that land, clearing the people from that land, from ancient tribal wars and conflicts there? Is it something even darker? Tonight, we're going to talk a little bit about that with my guest, Anna, who is definitely a boots on the ground cryptid huntress from the LBL. Hey, how are you doing?
I'm doing good. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for jumping in here tonight with us and talking about this, because this is a big deal for us to talk about here. And you are one of the big names that come to mind when we think about the Huntress group from the LBL. There's several of you guys, and last interview you gave us some really great stuff. So refresh my folks on who you are, and then we'll get into talking a little bit about the post Dogman stuff.
Okay. I'm Anna, and most of my life I have experienced paranormal activity. Always searched for an answer of what was going on in my life. Um, that's hard to find an answer to because it can be so many different things that's going on. But because of those experiences, it just led me down a road of always trying to search for the truth. And in August of 2022, I went on a camping trip to Land Between the Lakes. We stayed at Boswell Landing. It is a pretty primitive campsite. And even though I knew about the story about Dogman because I was friends with Jan Thompson, I never expected to have an experience. But we did, and it was crazy. After that, it like the LBL just pulls you in. You want to know what happened. And so I kept going back to try to figure out what that was because I'd never really had what is considered the cryptid experience. Mine were always paranormal. But since I've been doing this, I feel like it's just all connected.
Right, right. Now you mentioned Jan. Um, Tell us a little bit about her right quick, because some folks may not recognize her.
Well, Jan Thompson was, I believe, the original teller of the 82 attack in LBL. She was a paranormal investigator herself. She had a small group that went out for years and did went to the paranormal places. She had tons of pictures. She was the one that gave her story to a website called Guardian Tales, and it was on there for a long time. And then I believe it was Barton Nunley that she actually gave the story to, and it was in his first book, Mysterious Kentucky, Volume 1. And from there, it just grew. More people knew about it. And Jan always would tell me that she could never 100% prove that that story was true. She was just passing on what was told to her by those two police officers that stopped in that night that she knew.
Mm-hmm.
So, but she was a very kind person, and we talked a lot. She was like a mentor to me when I was on my journey trying to understand my paranormal experiences, and she helped me a lot with that, as did Bart, because he was always very helpful to me when I had questions. When I was just searching, I was very early on into my journey and actually trying to find out some truth in this world.
Wow. Yeah, because there's a lot of things. I mean, we both mentioned Barton. You've got his wife Letitia, who's amazing, and Jessica Jones,
Yeah.
both sisters of the wolf pack there.
Yeah.
amazing creatures that I gotta tell you, like these women. First of all, y'all got freaking nerves of steel to be able to do this.
Well, let me tell you, it gets scary in there. It gets scary.
Right, right. So let me ask you before we get into some of the things some of this stuff that's happened uh, lately. What do you think the LBL really is?
I think the LBL is a very dark and beautiful place. My friend War Criminal, he calls it a dark, beautiful place too.
Wow.
Um, I think so much has happened there from the Indian tribes that lived there to the settlers that came in and lost their land,
Mm.
and everything that was done to those families. I think it's interesting that it sits between two bodies of water, this peninsula. I think that has something to do with it. There are some small caves in the area. One of them was called Three Sisters Spring, and there was a cave over in that area. The Indians gave it that name. I have seen multiple Indian tree markers in the woods there. I've taken pictures of them. There are over 270 graveyards along the trace. And, you know, there have been some stories that have came through that not all of the graves were moved like they should have been. So can you imagine not resting because they left you in a spot that is now covered in water probably? There are
Right.
some gravestones that stick up out of the water when the water level is low during winter pool, and you can find them.
Yeah, they actually have photos of that. There's an area they call Cemetery Island or something like that. That
Yeah,
kind of
yes. And then you've got Eddyville Prison that's right there off Lake Barkley, and they do executions there, so you have that element as well.
right, right. I don't know what that high pitched squeal was, but that was terrifying.
Uh-oh.
Um, the yeah, that just that area in general. I mean, you're talking
Mhm.
about Kentucky clashing into Tennessee, that area.
Mhm.
It was also like they mined hematite at one time there.
Yes,
There's large deposits of iron in that area, and
yes,
probably quartz crystal as well.
yep,
Um, so there's this again. It to me it feels like almost like a battery, one big
yeah,
battery.
yes. And on the south end of the
Mhm.
Kentucky end of it and the northern end of the Tennessee, there were multiple Civil War forts, and there's a Civil War cemetery. So there were bloody battles there.
Wow.
So you've got that there as well. So you can imagine the mixture of energy that is there.
Yeah, I'd rather not.
Mhm,
It can be a lot. Um, so you've been there a couple of times recently
mhm.
to do some work, and I know there was like a big gathering at one point of folks. I think JJ was there. Uh, I think I caught a little bit of one of her podcasts where she was talking about some of the experiences there, which one of them sounded horrific to me. Because she was talking about being surrounded by something for a long period of time one night.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
we it was the same spot. We were in the same spot.
that spot.
Yeah. Um the experience that she had was on a Friday night,
Mhm.
and then on Saturday night, because we stay it was a small group of us, and they had their experience on Friday night, which was much more aggressive than the one that me and my daughter and Bart had on Saturday night, but it was the same thing. We were being surrounded. We could hear them walking. My daughter, now she's 38, so I'm not taking a kid with me. But she saw eye shine, and we kept shining the flashlight, and these were deliberate steps. These were not like an animal shuffling, because if it was an armadillo, because you know they do have armadillos there. If it was a possum, a raccoon, something like that,
Right.
we felt like you would hear more of a shuffling as it was coming towards us. This was steps. This was steps in the leaves, all around us. Now we kept our back to the bay because we were camped at a bay. And there was a ridge in front of us that rose up, and that's where it was coming from. And it did that for a long
Mm-mm.
time, a
Mm-mm.
long time. And it just like it was walking from one end by, to the other, just walking back and forth. And why we couldn't visually see something, we don't know. But in my opinion, I feel like these things cloak. That's what I think. And that is why we weren't picking it up on camera,
Mm.
night vision, but we were hearing it. I mean, if it had been an armadillo or something like that, we would have picked that up. No,
Right.
there was nothing except that glimmer of eye shine my daughter caught. And it
God,
was tall, she said. It was tall.
that's insane. I cannot imagine having that around me. Um,
And then go climb in tents to go to sleep.
right.
I didn't. I climbed in the back of I was going to sleep in the back of my Jeep, but then it wasn't big enough to put our mattress in. So I got in the back of Letitia's car to sleep that night. But a lot of other people were sleeping in tents. So
And we're all thinking, I can't blame you.
I was like, yeah, I'm going to get in a car. Thank you.
Right? Let me lock myself into a tin can for the night. So when you what are some of the things you've experienced outside of that?
Okay.
Because that whole thing, I have to agree with you. I think they do cloak, whatever
Mhm.
they are.
Right.
But there were other things that you've experienced
Mhm.
there that were equally or even more so mind-blowing.
Yeah.
Tell us about some of those.
Now, I don't want to make it sound like every single time we go that we get activity, because there's some nights we don't. Some nights it is just quiet. But the times that we have experienced things, I have seen orbs, different color orbs. I've seen mainly the white ones, but I have seen blue and I have seen red. Shadow figures, shadow
Mm,
entities, I see all the time out there, day and night.
jeez.
And that freaks me out the most, I think, are the shadow entities. We were investigating this was not this past February, but February before. And we went into one of the cemeteries, and
Mhm.
we had been walking a lot that night, and I was sitting in the truck, had the window down, and this is like 2 in the morning. And there was a little birdhouse at this cemetery, and I thought I saw movement beside this little birdhouse. It was on a stake and hanging like from a shepherd's hook. You know how people put their flowers on? It was
Right.
something like that the little birdhouse was sitting on. And it flew. It was a shadow figure, and it flew past that little birdhouse straight at me. And literally, I couldn't move for a few, like 30 seconds maybe.
Yeah.
And there were one, two, three, four other people sitting in the truck with me. And War Criminal was driving, and he kept asking me, "What is it?" And I couldn't hear him because I was frozen. I was frozen in place.
Mm.
And I just wonder if at that moment, instead of running past me, it maybe ran through me. And that is why I couldn't speak for, it probably wasn't minutes. It was probably just, 10, 15 seconds, something like that. but he kept asking me what it was, and he literally had the truck turned around with the engine going, and I didn't even know. Finally, I came to my senses and was like, it was a shadow figure.
Jeez.
Yeah, that was really odd. That was the first time something like that had happened to me, was with the shadow figures that are there. Usually you just see them peeping through coming through the trees, dashing across, and they're fast. They're really fast. And they're
Mhm.
so much darker than the night. And I think that's interesting too, how they're so much darker that you can
Right.
see something peeping at you in the dark. That's happened so many times. I've heard voices out there audibly and picked them up on our cameras. Um, I have never really been able to hear what they're saying. You just know that it sounds like either a man or a woman talking. Sometimes they're having conversations, and that's very odd when you're miles deep out in the middle of nowhere and you know you're not talking. Um, so it's all of that phenomena. All of it's there. It's not just the cryptids. There's other stuff that is going on there. And we experience that a lot.
Wow. James Hood asked, have you seen any crawlers at the LBL?
I personally haven't seen the crawlers, but my daughter did. And she didn't even know how to describe it because she didn't know the term the spider crawl. And we were at a particular place that we investigate often. And it was her first, maybe second time there. May have been her first time there. And we're watching in the woods. It's dark. We've got the cameras off. We've got the flashlights off. Let your eyes get used to the dark, because if it's a clear night, you can start seeing the outline of the trees and stuff like that if you allow yourself to get used to the dark. But can you imagine sitting out there in the middle of the woods, no lights, turn your cameras off, turn your headlamps off, no flashlights. You're just sitting there in the dark and you're starting to be able to see some of the trees and stuff. And she had looked over and she was like, there is something on all fours crawling down the road. And it
Jeez.
freaked her out. And I was like, do you know what they call that? They call that the spider crawl. So my daughter has seen that. I personally haven't seen that, but she
Mm.
did.
Wow. When you had the one experience in the truck, did you have any like after effects of that at all?
Not while I was still at the LBL. Like, I wasn't able to talk or really think there for a few seconds until I was like snapped out of it and was finally able to answer War and let him know it was a shadow figure that I saw. Um, I can compartmentalize pretty good because I've had to deal with so much paranormal stuff through my life. So
Mm.
that's what I did with it. But when you get back home, sometimes you'll have really weird dreams. Yeah, it'll make you have dreams.
Wow. I can imagine that is probably, I would think, one of the more intense things that happen after an experience like that. I can imagine,
Yeah.
like, dreams. Oh God. Yeah. Um, the, the shadow people too. You talked about them peeking at you. Can you
Mhm.
see eyes?
No, it's just when I see them, it's just black, but you see the outline
Mhm.
of a person. You can tell that the shape of it is an outline of a typically human. Now, the
Mhm.
one time I saw something and it was in the shape of your classic Bigfoot. And
Mm.
that's why when people ask me, have you seen a Bigfoot in the LBL? I really don't know how to answer that, because what I saw, I didn't see any eyes, I didn't see any fur. Um, I just wonder if it was one of the shadow entities mimicking one
Mm.
because it made no noise, there was no smell, but I saw the outline of it. You know, that cone head, really broad shoulders, come right out of that wood line and stood there. But like I said, there was no noise.
Mm.
And then the girl I was camping with, when she turned around and her headlamp went by that way, there was nothing there. But as she started walking across, that thing turned its head because it was facing me. I always like to compare it to those metal signs that people have of the cutout of the Bigfoots they put in their yards and stuff.
Mhm.
But that's from the side. This thing was looking straight at me, straight on. But I didn't see any eyes. There was no eye shine. I didn't see red eyes or anything like that. It was just black. But it just had the shape of a classic Bigfoot. But that's why I wonder if it was just a shadow entity mimicking. And that's the kind of stuff that's also out there in LBL.
Mm. Wow. And what about UAPs? Have you seen any of those?
I have not really noticed anything in the skies. And I think that's one of my faults. I think when I'm out there, I'm not looking up enough. I think that's now I'll look up in the trees, but as far as
Oh,
studying the
yeah.
sky, I don't do a lot of that. But I will have to say that a lot of the areas that we go into, it's so tree covered that
Mhm.
you don't see a lot of the sky in some of the spots we go to. I mean, there's some areas like where they cut out for the electric lines, and we'll go through those, and the sky open up, and you'll be able to see. But I think that's one of the things I need to pay more attention to is looking up in the skies more often when I'm out there.
Yeah. I can imagine spending a lot of time looking up in the trees because there's a lot going on there. Uh, and you had mentioned at one point having seen a Mothman-like creature there too,
Yeah,
which is kind of interesting because I know it feels like to me like there's a lot of kind of air activity going on there is the best way I can describe it.
yeah, yeah.
Um, eh, when you talk about the hauntings, I really hate to say that, use that term with this, but have you noticed like any children?
Um, there are times that it sounds like I hear children's voices.
Wow.
And
Yeah.
there are cemeteries out there that have a lot of children and babies in them.
Mhm.
There are a couple of Chinese cemeteries out there because it was Chinese laborers that came in um, for the furnaces. They
Mhm.
worked the furnaces, so there's a couple of Chinese cemeteries out there.
I did not know that.
Yeah,
There's a lot of the history that I'm still working on when it comes to the LBL.
yeah,
So
and now this is something that happened recently.
mhm,
Kind of blew my mind. This is something I have never seen before, and I know it's going to sound so weird, but that's just the LBL. It's going to give you its weirdness. So, this was a trip that we did in March.
mhm,
We went out to a particular spot that is pretty far out. You got to cross a creek to get to it. And this was just insane, insane night. It was a Friday night. In of note, there was severe storms
mm,
going to come in, so it felt electric that night. It was a Friday night. Uh, Further to the west, they were having tornadoes. So huge storm system, but it had not come into the LBL yet. But boy, you could feel it. You could feel it. It was electric that night. So we get there, we park, because that is what we like to do. We like to choose a spot, we park, we get settled. It's like you need to settle in. You need to settle in. You need to let things go quiet again. You need to be quiet and then listen. That's what we did. So war criminal got out of his truck. He walked over to the edge of one of the creeks, and he got so lightheaded, and he had to come back to the truck. As he's coming back to the truck, because he's lightheaded, needs to kind of brace himself, I'm hearing men talking across this creek through the woods. And my first thought was, well, is there somebody out there camping? Did we come up on people camping? So I'm looking for any lights, of campers or anything, and I'm not seeing anything. Got out my night vision, there's nothing. But I'm hearing two male voices having a conversation. I just don't know what they're saying. Well, then War feels a little better, and him and Letitia went over to the other side of the creek. They're hearing voices on that side. They're hearing logs being moved. Me and my daughter are watching the other side, because there was like a kind of a dry creek bed where we were looking, and then the main creek that we drove over to get to the spot we were in. And all of a sudden, me and my daughter start seeing sparkles of light along the ground. And you hear about that in folklore in different areas.
Yeah.
And thank goodness I wasn't there by myself. There was 4 of us, and I believe we all saw it, just these sparkles. And then I don't know what this was, but there was something that showed up between 2 trees. And it was insanely tall. I'm going to say about 15 to 20 feet tall. It had extremely thin shoulders, but it had like the head of a mushroom cap. And when I saw it the first time, I was like, what am I looking at? And I thought, I can't be seeing what I'm seeing. So I turned away and I looked back, and it was just the sky, because it was 2 thin trees and there was nothing there. And I could see the sky. I could see some stars. Looked away again and looked back, and it was there again. So I'm smacking War on the arm saying, look, look. And my daughter sees it, and then War sees it. And I look away again, because I'm like, am I really seeing this? Look back, it's still there. And I'm feeling like I don't need to look at it anymore. It felt evil, is what I'm going to say. And something inside me was like, don't look at it. And so I stopped looking at it. But from the back seat, it was dark. We didn't have any lights on. My daughter is saying, you need to look at it. You need to look at it. So how did she know I was not looking at it from that front seat?
Wow. Yeah.
So I don't know what that was. I had never seen anything like that before. Thank goodness the others that were with me saw it. And once we got home, my daughter did a little bit of research. And what it could have possibly been is called a Leshy, Leshy. It's a shape-shifting forest spirit from Slavic lore. It changes its size to match the surroundings. It's extremely tall, thin shoulders. It has a mushroom-like head, thin limbs, and it enjoys leading travelers astray.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah. But that is the weirdness of the LBL.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the thing that I've noticed when people talk about some of these experiences that like when you use the term highest strangeness to describe the LBL, I mean, you're definitely there. Um, the one of the things that I find interesting about it is I feel like there are for one thing, I think the Fae are very active there.
Absolutely.
It's like when and my relationship with the Fae are very strange. So, when I talk about the Fae and the LBL, um, I think they play a big part in some of the activity there, but
Yes.
there's definitely earth spirits,
Mhm.
uh, earth elementals
Yes.
that reign there as well, and I think
Yeah.
there are different there's kind of a north and south in the LBL, the Kentuckian obviously being the north and the Tennessee area being the south. There's almost like what I wanna say, like, 2 kingdoms there, a north and a south kingdom in a sense, and it feels like to me from the experiences people are having, like, especially right there toward the middle is where a lot of the high strangeness tends to almost escalate, if you will,
Yeah.
and you get a lot of mixtures of stuff going on there. So,
Absolutely.
now you really perked up when I mentioned the Fae. Have you had experiences with the Fae there?
Um, I think that night we had an experience with the Fae.
Definitely so, definitely. I think that is definitely a good example
Mhm.
of, I almost cringe talking too much about them, but,
Right, I know.
oh gosh, so very much so.
But it
Uh,
was very odd. It was very intense. There were multiple things happening in the time that
mhm.
we were there. So that's just sometimes that's what it gives you. And that night it was piling it on. We do
Wow,
feel
yeah.
like we do feel like the voices that we were hearing when we first got there could have possibly been some Sasquatch. Um, we can't say for sure because we didn't visually see anything. We were just hearing the talking. And but it also could have just been the Fae messing with us as well. You don't know what you're going to get.
Right, it is kind of a grab bag of hot mess there.
Yes, absolutely. And like I said, that storm was coming in. It was electrifying that night. Now, Saturday night, it was just calm. We really didn't get anything on Saturday night, but that Friday night before the storm come in, oh wow, that it gave us a good old dose of LBL high strangeness.
Right, and I if I remember correctly, I feel like I was out of town that week, but there was Wednesday, Tuesday, Wednesday night of that week may have been when there was that fairly big electrical storm that passed through. There was one night in particular, like I said, I feel like I was out of town that night, but I was kind of watching it on the security cameras at the house,
Yeah.
and there was a really intense electrical storm that walked through at one point. That may have actually been that weekend. I may have actually been home whenever that happened. I don't remember, but I definitely remember watching a really intense electrical storm one night.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that's one of the things that is very uh, the electrical storms that pass through there and where the LBL is too, there tends to be a lot of intense weather activity
Yes.
through there, like from like Clarksville on, it
Mhm.
seems like a lot of intense storm activity.
Yeah.
So, for those of you that are watching and will be watching later, if you've had experiences at the LBL or you know somebody that's had an experience at the LBL, leave us a little bit of a comment down below telling us what you've experienced there. And don't forget to like and subscribe as well. Um, the thing I find very interesting too about the activity there, like now, this doesn't all really happen like just strictly around the graveyards because there are many graveyards there. I think we said
Yeah.
there was you said there was like over 270 there.
Yeah.
Um, but this activity happens away from the graveyard areas as well, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I think you can get more at around the graveyard areas, but it happens everywhere in different spots. There's no telling what is soaked into the ground there.
Right, right. Do you guys carry equipment with you to get readings, like EF, RF meters and so forth like that?
Yeah. War criminal. He has quite a few pieces of equipment that he brings. I have night vision and the infrared thermometer. I wish I had the camera, but I, can't afford that right now. But and then we do also have a couple of other things like psionics. Bart and Letitia have some nice equipment that they bring when they go, and we kind of all group together and help each other out as we're using the equipment. So we do have a decent array that we use, and we're always looking to include more, but little at a time as we can. But
Right.
what's just so interesting is so often when I pull out my night vision, I don't see a whole lot. So I'm of the mindset that they know you're watching them.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I feel that a lot. I've noticed occasionally people have gotten like I think Brian Jeffries with Black Mass Paranormal has gotten some very interesting uh, thermal imaging from time to time, and a couple of other people there in East Tennessee have picked up some stuff. But I've noticed it's very difficult
Yeah.
when you're out in wooded areas to find stuff on the thermals for some reason.
Yeah.
Um, now, has anybody ever used a Geiger counter out there?
Um, I haven't, and I'm trying to remember if War Criminal has one of those or not. Can't remember for sure. I don't want to say that he does if he doesn't. Maybe he was talking about possibly getting one, but we've never. If he had it, we've not used it. So not that one. Not when I've been there. We haven't used that piece of equipment, but it would be interesting. That would be very interesting.
Wow. So apparently somebody was able to get a pic of one watching them at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Oh, no, thank you. Yeah,
Yeah,
this is
that,
one of the reasons why I don't know.
yeah, yeah. I mean, they're watching you all the time, day or night.
And do you ever feel like when you're there, do you sense that are things remote viewing you from a distance?
Yeah,
See, I feel that a lot whenever I'm out in certain areas. Like I say, I've not been to LBL yet. Um, physically, I've not been there.
yeah.
The there feels like to me that there's a lot of energy focused on that area from outside too as well,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
one of the yeah, and that's the thing of is like, I mean, because we're talking about it, as you said, it's not normal. It's just not normal. Do you feel like the LBL may be a portal of sense?
Yeah. Yes. I've often said that I think it's like a window area. I
Right,
think other
right.
people have called it that too, and I believe that. There is so many things that go on there. Just not one thing in particular. There's a lot of stuff that goes on there.
Yeah, I feel like I think I've actually heard Jessica say that before. Jessica Jones, if you guys have not seen some of her stuff on the LBL, go watch it because it's amazing. She has some crazy experiences everywhere she goes, but I feel like the LBL, like you said, is it brings it on. It brings it on hardcore when it brings it on too.
Yeah. And like
Um,
I said, there's some nights that it can just be really quiet and you're not really getting anything.
mhm.
But other times, yeah, you're gonna hear, see,
Yeah,
feel something.
and that's one of the things I definitely want to stress is you anytime you're going into any area, it doesn't matter whether it's an area of high strangeness or not, because I live in an area of high strangeness, and I can tell you, like, it, it's not 24/7 manifestation like all the
Right.
time. We're not talking about the Disneyland of crazy all the time here. But
Yes.
what does manifest, when it does manifest, it comes on really strong at times. And
Yes.
with the LBL, I feel like at times it also depends on a lot of factors,
Mhm.
the alignment of planets. So, so we can talk about a little bit of it being affected by astrology, the moon phases,
Yes.
um, the season, whatever season we're in.
Yeah.
Uh, and so, have you noticed any effects that the area has on the wildlife there?
Oh, yeah. In May of 23, when we were there, it was a full moon weekend.
Right.
And that was the weekend that we left in 2 cars. It was War Criminal, Gabby and Elijah Henderson, and then me, Letitia, and another lady. We headed down the trace. The animals were insane that night. I had not seen that many deer before in my life. There was a beaver that came out on the road that night, and we had to swerve to miss it. And then Warren them behind us, they stopped, and Elijah got out to take a picture of it. We were seeing bats fly by us, owls. It honestly felt like things were being flushed out of the woods that night towards the trace, the woods, or out right out of. There were so many deer, and I live in the country. I mean,
Mhm.
we just hit a deer in November and had to get our car fixed.
Oh,
But
geez.
yeah, but that night they were everywhere, all the way down the trace. We were staying close to Grand Rivers, and we drove all the way down to Boswell Landing, and there were herds of deer all down the trace that night. And that was the night that we saw that weird, as Letitia called it, the mini Mothman thing. It was the same night. I mean, the owl comes swooping down right in front of our windshield. But when we saw it, we knew exactly what it was. We knew it was an owl. When the bats were come flying close to us, we knew they were bats. Um, but that one thing that we saw, we don't know what that was.
Right. Right, and that's the thing when you talked about that before during the
Yeah.
last interview, and was that the weekend of a blood moon?
If I'm, it was a full moon in early May,
Okay.
and I'm thinking it was called a strawberry moon.
Strawberry moon, that's what we're okay, yeah, yeah.
I'm
I knew
thinking that, I'm thinking that's what it was.
I'm pretty sure after you said that, you saying that in the last interview that it was a strawberry moon.
Yeah.
Um,
And it was so odd because when we were driving the trace going towards Boswell Landing and we saw the moon, it was bright orange. There was a little bit of clouds around it, and it was so bright it was illuminating the clouds orange. But when we got back to camp, it was just a white moon to everybody that was at camp that saw it that night.
wow.
So, what was going on that night? It was very strange, but it was a full moon weekend.
Anna, do you ever feel like you have attachments from the park?
When I first started researching, yeah, I came back the first few times. doing investigations, and I started having dreams.
Mm,
And I felt a huge pull to go back, like it was calling me back.
mhm,
Same thing happened to my daughter. She went the first time, she goes home, she's having crazy dreams about the LBL, and she was, r you know, really, really wanting to get back there, and it
mhm,
has that pull on people. Now, because I had to deal with paranormal most of my life, um, I know how to put up walls. I learned to do that at a young age because there was so much of it. And when I started dreaming about the place, the first couple of investigations, I was like, okay, it's trying to get a hold on me. And I think it does get a hold of people. I really do. It's like it's an
absolutely.
entity in itself.
Absolutely. I do wanna give a shout out to Martin Groves, who's in the room. He said hi to you, by the way.
Oh, hey,
Um,
Martin.
Martin's experiences in the LBL are equally amazing. If you guys get an
Yes.
opportunity, check out some of the interviews he's given, about experiences there. I know some of the stuff that all of you guys have experienced is just mind-boggling to me. Like, I go back and I try to dissect uh, these experiences that you guys share, and one of the things that is definitely, to me, I mean, it it is all very much, you said you feel like it's connected, and
Mhm,
I do too. I feel like this is very much something that manifests from either from other dimensions
mhm.
and from the spiritual planes as well.
Yeah,
There's a lot of astral, there's a lot of etheric going on there
yeah.
in a lot of ways. So let me ask you this. I know a lot of the stuff there had been kind of dark energy and so forth, but have you experienced any celestial energy there?
I'm not sure. Um, most of the feelings that I get are to just be aware. I don't wanna say that it's all negative. I don't wanna say it's all negative. Um, Nothing has ever really hurt me while I've
Mhm.
been there, physically. Um, but I'm not saying that can't happen either.
Right.
Whatever happened that one trip with the little sparkles that we were seeing, that was kinda magical in a way.
Mhm.
Um, but I still kinda wonder if that was the Fae messing with us too, so
That's very possible. Because they're definitely tricksters at times. And
Right, right.
I I know there's one particular group of Fae there that align a lot with some elements of practice
Yeah,
without getting
right.
too
Yeah,
vocal about that.
yeah,
So I feel like there are people, both in and outside of the LBL that sometime, um, kinda manipulate their activity as well, and call them forward, and I think that's sometimes
yeah,
how we get some of that activity, uh, with them. But
yeah.
there's elements within the LBL, there's areas
Mhm.
within the air that's almost like a vortex in a way as well.
Yeah.
And, have you encountered any of those?
I think that one spot where we were that one night could very well be one of those.
Yeah,
Um,
I do too.
I know multiple people have investigated that spot, and they have had some very intense, uh, things happen to them in that area. I know Martin has been there. Martin was with us in May of 23. He was at the campground and saw the moon white, where the rest of us was that had gone out on the trace that night saw it orange, and he was with us on this last camping trip too, so he's
Mhm.
so knowledgeable about everything that goes on in LBL as well, and so is War Criminal. Just been in there for years, and it is an honor to be able to go in there with two gentlemen that I really admire and I call my friends and am able to get in there and investigate with them.
Yeah, yeah. You know, I had the pleasure of being at, one of the conferences where Martin gave his story, and he there was some moments that I was literally just shook
Yeah.
listening to him talk about this because, you know, when we look at, like, there are places that I go to, not only locally here, but in East Tennessee, that have some serious vibes going on, okay? I'm talking about, like, Oak Ridge and other places like that.
Oh, yeah, Oak Ridge.
Oh, god.
Mhm. I've been over there. I had a friend whose husband worked at Oak Ridge and went to stay with her, and whoa, that area, you could feel it.
You know, I gotta tell you, the last time I was over there in the Oak Ridge area, there's there's a section that is the Y12 entrance, which is right there on the road going into town, off of 40. On the hill over there, there's this old church that's always lit up at night, and it's absolutely the creepiest feeling I get off of that. And I've been trying to I really want to get over that way,
Mhm.
uh, during the day and the night to be able to get some photos of that area because there's a lot going on there. There was actually I did not know this, um, until recently when I was looking at some of the information that I was trying to dig up there. There was an abduction. A fisherman was abducted there at
Mm,
uh, on the Clinch River at one point, and apparently it was very. I know that Katie Page has been over there before in the
yeah,
Clinch River area doing some research on that, but I did not realize there was actively an abduction that took place over there not too far from uh, the reactor area there. So
gosh.
there's always fishermen over there in that water, and it just creeps me out every time I see a boat.
Yeah, I don't think I'd wanna fish right there.
No, no. And there's a lot of there's just a lot of strangeness going on over that way. I've told people before that I really want to do a deep dive of Oak Ridge
That
at
would
some
be
point.
that would be really awesome.
I've been warned not to by several people, but at the same time, I don't want to go into the facility or anything, but I definitely want to know more about the secret city.
Yeah.
Um, so let's here's the other thing that I'm curious about over there. Are there ever any physical have you seen physical signs, physical evidence
Oh, yeah.
of things like witchcraft taking place in the LBL and so
Yeah,
forth?
yeah. I've seen some things, yeah.
Yeah, see.
Stuff hanging in trees. I have found glyphs on the ground. Um, yeah, there's stuff going on in there.
I feel like there's been a lot of activity over there. I think it's an area that people try to harness the energy. Why would you do that? I have no idea.
Yeah,
But, to each their own, and I get it. There are people that, you know, for whatever reason, I understand there are some people that go there to try to heal the past energies there and so forth too, which I
yeah.
get it. Um,
Mm.
I know Martin and a few other people have talked about some of the things that the government did
Yeah, it was horrible.
luring those. Well, yeah, they would lure these folks away calling themselves we're gonna have a meeting about this, and
Mhm.
they would come back home to their homes being burned down and dozed
I
and
know.
all kinds of things, and these people were actively protesting, like, physically trying to protest the
Yeah.
takeover.
Mm.
Um, if you you know what? Speaking of which, Jessica's actually in the house tonight. Jessica Jones, we've been talking about you. Are your ears burning?
Hi,
Um,
Jessica.
the, the best part about the history of all this, is definitely not based on that time period. I feel like, and somebody had asked earlier about the furnaces, what the furnaces were about. That was where they were mining the iron
Yeah.
at that point, right?
Yeah. Yes.
See, I feel like that was probably the best period for the LBL area was during that era and the era of the indigenous people living there.
Yeah.
I think those were the times that we can chalk up as the good days.
Yeah. I mean, there were stores and schools and multiple churches. These were small communities that where people made, they lived. They were generational homesteads and they buried their families there and they planned to be buried there and they planned to farm the land and keep their stores and it was just all taken from them, just ripped away. I
Right,
just can't imagine how much heartbreak that was during that time. But before that, I can just imagine what a beautiful life it was there before that happened.
right, right. That's the thing that I think a lot of us don't understand. When we talk about this, and JFK was the one who essentially
Mhm.
kind of got the ball rolling with this turning into,
Yeah,
what it is now, which, I mean, love him or hate him,
yeah,
his attachment to anything is not necessarily going to be a good outcome ever.
yeah,
Uh, so I feel like I feel like there's a lot within the history, especially that time period where the folks lived there and thrived there. I feel
mhm,
like there was a lot of energy built up there,
mhm,
from their activity and their life, and
yeah,
that was positive energy, and it was probably a time period that was one of the balancers that keeps the
yeah,
area from being much worse than it is now, because that energy does balance out.
yeah,
And it's very interesting too, because I know one of the things, and I've talked about the animals there, one of the things that they've had a lot of issue with are the wild boars
oh,
there.
yeah.
Now,
We got run out of the woods one night by one.
oh my god.
Yeah, we were walking, the Dogman Trail in Boswell Landing, and that's in, I think, Martin's second book. He can correct me if I'm wrong, but you can read about the Dogman Trail at Boswell and what happened there.
Mhm.
And we were actually walking it. It was at night, and thank the Lord that Letitia had her night vision on because she saw it coming, and we had to haul out of there to get away from it.
Wow. Yeah, no. They're between them and the copperheads and the rattlers, those I can deal with some of the spiritual stuff a lot better than I can deal with that, okay? It's like those
Yeah.
those 3 things are the trinity of death that you just can't deal with it.
And I've seen my share of copperheads down there.
And that's the thing that's like, I don't think people realize, like, that area is infested, literally just infested with copperheads and rattlesnakes, and I think a lot of people, think they can just go there and, just, smurf it through the woods, and
Yeah.
go hunting for monsters and haints, but without having to worry about that kind of stuff. But no, there are serious physical dangers there as well.
Yes. And that is one thing that we agree with each other before we go out in the woods is there is a chance one of us could physically get hurt by, get bit by a snake, one of those hogs get us. We know there are legitimate dangers when we're going in there. But the pull to investigate is just overwhelming. But you take precautions. You just need to take your precautions. And I would never go by myself. I know Martin does, and I know Ward does, and Bart and Letitia have gone out there and camped by themselves in a tent. I would not be able to do that. I have to be with a group of people.
Yeah, that's definitely not one of the things that, like I said, if I go out there, I'm definitely going with people, and I'm going during the day because those are the two boundaries. Jessica, if you're still in the room, by the way, I want to say I gotta get you on here to talk about some of your stuff with the LBL too, because I know you've got some great stories. When when you leave out of the LBL, I've talked about attachments. I've talked about some of the other stuff, but have you? You say you haven't had in a while any feelings of attachment or anything like that. Do you? Some people are always saying, you know, I feel like I left a piece of myself there or whatever. Do you ever get that sense that there's a little bit of you connected to the LBL even outside of the area?
Yes, and I will tell you why. I think it's because the spirits that are in there get to know you.
Mhm.
They know
I
you.
feel like that.
You go back enough, they know you.
And that history, like there's a lot of there were a lot of French fur trappers and so forth
Yeah,
in that area at one time and so forth too. So not only do we have indigenous, and the locals that lived there before the land grab, but there were also, the fur trappers and others that
mhm,
were there
mhm.
at different times that have definitely left a lingering experience
Yeah,
there. And I feel like, again, when it comes to the energies left behind, some of the better energies left behind, I feel like we have to accept the fact that some of these folks did contribute to that, the fur
mhm,
trappers and other people.
yeah.
Do you ever get the sense, is there is there areas there that you feel like are protected, if you will, areas where you don't have experiences at all and never have an experience?
Yeah, I mean, there's been, a couple of areas that you feel like you shouldn't tread upon
Mhm.
is the best way to put it. And if I get those feelings, I try to be respectful.
Wow, yeah, yeah. It's definitely there's some spots there that feel very, I don't wanna say gated, but that's the best way I can explain it.
And there's a lot of physical gates there too that are like
There
that.
are.
Mhm.
There are. Have you noticed areas that have, because I know somebody was saying something at one point about they have heavy surveillance there now. Um,
That's possible. I mean, we did a hike back to Hotel California, and that's out in the middle of nowhere. And we got down there, and all of a sudden, here comes a forest ranger, and he was hoofing it down that trail to get to us. And when he got there, he basically was just asking like some generic questions, and we knew he was trying to figure out why we were there. So how did he know unless they had surveillance?
Right.
Now he was nice. I'm not trying to say that he was being rude to us or anything. He wasn't. We ended up taking a picture with him. So there's a picture of all of us in a big group with him. But why? Why?
Yeah.
I mean, all of a sudden here he comes down that trail and he is walking it fast. And how y'all doing? How y'all doing today? What's going on? You know, just chit chat. But it's like, why?
Right.
So
Yeah,
that makes you that makes you wonder, yeah, do they got surveillance up there? Now I know they were putting in some new internet things up in the area.
mm,
So they've got I don't know exactly what to call them. I don't want to call them the wrong thing. But placing the boxes up in certain areas
mhm.
to get the internet out there. So yeah, but I mean, I've experienced multiple times the unmarked white vans out there. Yeah, I've even
Wow.
got video of them. The main experience that I had with that, which I think is the weirdest, was we were in an area investigating. It was 1 a.m. We did some call blasting. We got answered by something that was canine, and that was very
Uh,
scary because I know it wasn't the red wolf that was there. It wasn't the coyotes. Um, and as typical, it howled with the coyotes, which you can tell the difference. So we had that experience, and it was time for us to go. We'd been there for a while. We left out of there. This is nothing but a rock road, miles into nothing. It's just fields and woods. And 1:30 in the morning, a white van turns to go down the road we had just came out of, and it had little satellite dishes on top of it, and the guy had glasses on and a button down shirt, and it was blacked out windows except for the driver's and passenger side. So
mm-mm.
where was he going at 1:30 in the morning dressed like that in a white van with little satellite dishes on the top of it?
Wow.
And I was so shocked I didn't get a picture.
Yeah, there's
Just
some
like, I was like, what? You know, we were like, looky there. I mean, he turned right beside us. It was just a small lane, rock road leading into the woods, nothing back there. He turned right beside us.
oh my gosh.
The second time I saw one, I did get video of that one. I
Good.
kept my wits about me and I got video of that one.
Good. Yeah.
But
James
that's
Hood,
just another phenomenon that's going on in there.
right? Right. Exactly. That's, James Hood had asked if there's any subterranean activity there.
Oh, yeah. We hear booms in the ground all the time. Now, I do want to say that they do have a quarry there. They
Mm,
have a quarry up near Grand Rivers, but are they blasting 24/7? And
mm,
sometimes when we're out there, it's not coming from the direction of the quarry. These booms that we hear are not coming from that direction.
mm,
There's been a couple of times I have actually felt the ground rumble just a little bit with that.
mm,
You can hear them, you can hear those booms. And there was one time I was out there and I was with War and another lady, and we got strobed by one of the helicopters that flew over. You know, it was just doing the strobe light on us as it went over.
wow. Yeah,
They were
that
just messing with us. I know that wasn't anything paranormal or anything like that, but it was very weird to be standing in the dark, complete dark, and a helicopter's getting ready to come over, and then it just starts flashing you.
right, right. That yeah.
They
It's
were letting us know that they knew we were down there.
yeah, I feel
So
that
are they watching? You know, are they watching from above what we're doing? Are they
kinda makes
looking
you
for
wonder.
something else?
Yeah. So have you experienced any MIB activity?
Other than the white vans that we don't know what's going on,
Mhm.
it's mainly been that. That's been
Okay.
odd. And it doesn't say, like, forestry service or anything on the vans. I mean, if that's what it was, we could say they're just here monitoring, whatever, but it doesn't say that on any of the vans. It doesn't say that on their license plates. So, we
Hmm.
don't know what they're doing.
Wow. That's very interesting because it feels like to me sometimes that, I know I've read articles that people have written and talking about the surveillance of the area and so forth, and they claim that they've seen, like, cameras up in trees and so forth like that, and things kinda tucked around, but it feel like to me that the area is highly watched
Mhm.
there, and have you noticed any military activity there in the
Oh,
area?
yeah. I mean, Fort Campbell is close by,
Very
so
close.
we see the helicopters a lot when we're there,
Mhm.
and there's been a couple of nights that I've been out there, and you can hear their training maneuvers going on.
Mm.
So, yeah, that's interesting.
Do they tend to work around the high strangeness areas a lot?
I don't know how far or even if they're actually in the recreation area part of LBL
Mhm.
or if they're mainly staying in, like, the Fort Campbell area because they have a lot of acreage out there
Mhm.
in Fort Campbell, and it's fenced off, and there's
Right.
been a lot of strange activity in their wooded, fenced area of Fort Campbell as well. There's stories out there about stuff happening there. Do they come into the LBL? Probably. I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, they're flying those copters over all the time. We see them often.
Wow. See, that's the thing that makes me wonder about the LBL too is how much military activity, how
Mhm.
much control the
Yeah,
military has in that area. Because
I've wondered that too.
I feel like there's a lot of I almost feel like there's power struggle in the sense
Yeah,
times. And that's one of the things that I think a lot of people, have kind of hinted to
yeah,
that there's a lot of military experience or influence there in the area.
yeah, they're so close.
Right, and then, of course, I know that the forestry division has their people there, but there's also a
Mhm.
lot of the public safety patrol, the police officers and sheriff's department also tends to be found there as well, correct?
Not so much like in 22 and 23 when I was in there, you didn't
Mhm.
really see a whole lot, but the last couple of years, it has ramped up. You see a lot more of the official vehicles, forestry rangers, coming up and down, going down some of the, side roads. You do see a lot more of them now.
Mhm. And have you known of any or many, reports of missing people in a while there? Because I know at one point that was a problem.
I haven't checked into that recently or heard anything recently. Uh, Martin would probably be the one that would know about that one. Um, the last one that I was, privy to was when I was doing that interview with you and they were looking for that missing lady right in the middle
Yeah,
of our interview. Forest
yeah.
ranger came up and was asking us had we seen her in her white truck because she was considered a missing person. Have no idea if they found her or not. I never did see the vehicle that weekend that we stayed there, but uh, just chalk it up to another piece of the craziness of LBL.
Right, because 'cause there's been a lot of reports of people finding, abandoned campsites and all sorts
Yeah.
of stuff there.
Yeah,
And I
Bart has found abandoned campsites when he's been in there. Yeah. Yeah.
Please. Yeah, right, Martin, I feel that. I feel like that they have ramped up a lot of security there and a lot of, um there's been a lot more attention placed on the area, which gives concern to me in a sense because I feel like that means that they've obviously had an increase in activity period
Yeah.
there. And is that what you feel? Do you feel like, because I know you said that March was pretty crazy for you guys. Do you feel
Yeah.
like there has been more paranormal activity there over time? Has it increased?
For me, yes. Um, like this past March when we were there and whatever that tall thing was in the trees
Yeah.
that I had never seen before, never experienced before. Um, I mean, that was that was frightening, whatever that was. Um, I do think it probably has to do with that. Make sure I'm saying this correctly. The Leshy. I'm sure we have a version of that. When I looked it up, it said it could also be very akin to the Flatwoods monster because of the shape of the head on that one. So it kind of pulled that one up when we were trying to research what that could possibly be.
Mhm.
So that came up as well. But yeah, it does feel like at times it is ramped up more so than it has in the past. And you know, what is contributing to that? Is it that there's more people coming into research and, are they doing things to try to call things in? Or is it just the vibe and these things know? Are they feeding off that energy
Right.
with more people being interested? And I'll tell you something that was odd too. I was camping, Martin was camping. There's a decent sized group of us, Bart, Letitia, the weekend that a man drowned in Kentucky Lake. And it was very amped up with high strangeness that weekend. We were
Mhm.
staying at a particular campground, and I know Martin was seeing shadow figures there. I was seeing shadow. This was in the campground during the day.
Mm.
So is it feeding off certain energy? I don't know. I'm just guessing. But yeah, that was a weird time. I was seeing it during the day, these shadow figures in the campground that we were staying at the time.
Mm.
And then found out later that someone had drowned. Well, I don't think he actually drowned. I don't think they found any water in his lungs, but they did recover his body from the lake.
Wow. And that leads me to another question. Has there been any reports of unknown animal attacks there?
In the LBL recently,
Mhm.
none that I have heard of recently.
Wow. 'Cause it feels like that has been a focus of a lot of people's attention over, uh, the last few months. We had the one experience there in Oklahoma, which honestly, after the DNA evidence from that, I lean toward that being a domestic dog attack
Yeah,
a little bit more so than I did,
yeah,
question mark, uh, because honestly, I feel like there's still room some give room there in a
yeah,
way, if that makes sense. I'm not fully convinced one way or the other so much
yeah.
with that.
And if there
Um,
were attacks, are they going to announce them or are they going to keep them on the hush?
right, right. Well, and that was one of the things because there was 2 different attacks on the same road in Newport, Tennessee, not that long ago. like a man and a woman at various times were both attacked on the same road.
Oh my
Uh,
gosh.
yeah, and those were really, I think, again, I think Jessica Jones is one of the people who talked about this on her show, and uh, between her and Harley Owens talking about it, I kind of dug in there to find what I could on it, and again, there was a lot of evidence that it could have been question mark um,
Mhm.
domestic animals,
Yeah.
but I think we have to understand that along with all the other things like the UAP reports, the cryptid reports, and so forth,
Mm.
there's a tendency for people to want to normalize
Mhm.
and give rational explanation for things
Yeah.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Uh, again, the what was it, like 6, 7-year-old boy that was attacked in I think I forget exactly where it was now. I think it was somewhere in Kentucky, and he was they found his body up a cliff.
Well, I can give you a little information on that if you're talking about the Corey Godsey case,
Right, yes.
because I researched that one straight off because it sounded so weird to me. Um, I will tell you that if you scroll back on his mother's Facebook page, you will see conversations between family members, and you will find your answer in that. And it was a family uh, pet situation.
Mhm.
And I don't want to say a whole lot because I don't know like what I can say and not say about that particular,
Right.
what I'm, what I get in trouble for, like maybe misquoting somebody. But if you take the time to just scroll back to that date, you'll find out exactly what happened because her and a couple other family members are arguing back and forth about what
Mhm.
happened to him that day, and you get your answers. And it wasn't a cryptid.
Okay. Okay. It's very interesting because that was one of those cases that was highly debated.
Yeah, I took the screenshots. I'll send
Mhm.
those to you so you can read them.
Thank you, I appreciate that. Yeah, 'cause, again, that's one of those that I dug into for a while. There were things that I kinda went,
Yeah,
yeah,
and I did too. That's why I was like, oh, I got to research this because it was just maybe an hour and a half from me. And I remember I was telling Jessica about this case when we were camping a couple weekends ago. So yeah, it's that's what I learned. But I'll send you those screenshots and you'll be able to see what they were talking about.
thank you, I really appreciate that because yeah, that was one of those cases that I just kinda marked as inconclusive at this
Yeah,
point because
yeah,
I didn't find enough of information to convince me one way or the other.
yeah,
Uh, and I feel like you I mean, again, when it comes to places like the LBL, there's so many just natural dangers there,
yeah.
animal-wise and reptilian wise, I shouldn't say reptilian.
Yes,
Um, you know, that I think word to the wise, precaution is a really important thing in these
yeah,
places. The amount of activity that you have experienced over the years, though, and so forth, eh, we've talked about the LBL being a portal, being
mhm,
so very many things.
yeah,
At the end of the day, if you had to describe the overall LBL, the energy, the different experiences that happen there, paranormal and non-paranormal.
mhm,
If somebody said to you, paint me a picture of what this looks like in your head,
mhm.
how would you go about describing that to them? Because your personal experiences have been some of them pretty traumatic, actually. So,
Yeah.
if they said, "Paint me a picture of what the LBL is to you," what would that look like?
For me,
Mhm.
it is a place of mystery, but to be respected. It can be beautiful and it can be dark and dangerous, but it wants to be respected.
Definitely so.
That's the overall that I get from there.
Right. Right. Yeah,
Because there's everything in there, in my opinion. And
yeah.
it's all connected. I think all of these things are connected.
And when you say that, what does that mean to you?
For me, it's being respectful of the family cemeteries that are
Mhm.
there. And we do try to do that. It is being respectful of, I would not go in there and try to do any, and each to their own. I don't want to, come across as putting anybody down for whatever they choose to do. But I
Mhm.
wouldn't go and try to like cast any spells or
Right.
do anything like that in there. And that is the part that I think there's some of that going on in there. And I don't think it's bringing up anything positive.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely feel that there's the things that manifest from that, play a huge part in some of the things that we're seeing people experiencing there.
And I guess it's in your intent as well.
Mhm. Yeah.
If you just want to go in there and investigate and talk, that's one thing. But just don't be disrespectful of the land and the previous people, you know,
Right.
that were there and buried there.
War criminal. Hey, we've been yours probably been burning too because we've been the
Hey, war.
and that's one of the things that you when you again when you say that all this is connected, that I guess that's really
Mhm.
when what do you feel these things are when you say all things connected? What are you really saying there?
For me personally, what I have
Mhm.
experienced is like when I'm out there and I find a footprint,
Mhm.
I usually only find like one or two. So where's the rest of them? Are these things just
Right.
disappearing?
Right.
And so I think, and now this is just my opinion on what I have experienced.
Mhm.
I think paranormal, cryptid wise, everything is connected. I feel like these are all entities that are interdimensional, and I think they are coming in. I think they can be physical while they're here. But
Right.
for me, the footsteps that I find that just disappear, that is, for me, my clue that they are interdimensional, in
Right.
my opinion.
Right. Or even to quote, John Keel, ultra dimensional.
Yeah, ultra
Uh,
dimensional. Yeah. I read
ul
that book just recently, so that was, I mean, he even talked about Dogman
ultra
in that book.
terrestrial. Yeah. Did he say was it dimensional or terrestrial? It was ultra terrestrial, maybe is
Yeah,
what he said.
ultra terrestrial, I think it
Yeah.
was. Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's one of the things that we're really trying to dive into tonight with this is the real LBL, not the mythical,
There
land
you
of
go,
of
War.
yeah, the the mythical land of roses just does not happen there at all. And the lore of the area, I guess that's one of the things that I kind of want to touch on too is
Mhm.
you if somebody was to try to research the lore of the LBL, where would they go to? What would be their best source of information?
Well, not the visitor center. So
Yeah.
But I mean, um, there are like a couple of Facebook groups that are of families, ancestral families that were there, and there's a lot of information there. Um, I've read through some of those, and the people that are connected that actually had family that lived there, I'm going to say the majority of them don't really want to talk about the folklore of the area, but there are a few that have stepped forward and talked about what their grandparents and great grandparents experienced there and what they were told was in there while they lived there. So, I mean, researching some of that is a good idea. I mean, trying to find, they have a book in the visitor center of some of the cemeteries that shows where all the plots are as well. That's a piece of research people could use. I mean, I have gotten online in like the Mount Pleasant area. I researched that and found out that it was originally an African American community, and that is near the bunkers. And that is, they had their own church, they had their own school, they had their own homes in that area. And I mean, that's just another piece of history of the LBL. So you can dig in and find some things, and it's just a matter of looking in the right places. And if some of the family members want to talk, but I think a lot of them, they just have so much hurt left over from what happened that it's very hard to talk about. But that is where I found some of my research, is some of the Facebook groups and just looking online and typing in some of the towns, looking at the maps. The older maps can give you clues, and then you can type that in and you will find articles. I have found older articles that talk about things. So that is what I have done to learn more about that area. And the Indians that lived there too. I mean, that's how I knew about the Three Sisters Spring, because they were talking about that's where the Indians went to get their water, was at the Three Sisters Spring. And some of the people that lived there before the TVA took it would go into the cave that was there. They play in the cave. So it's there. You just got to dig a little harder.
Right. That's one of the things that I feel like is really important for people to really, if you want to get a clear picture, do some research on the LBL. I feel like that's one of the areas that is kind of the foundation of the research itself, is getting to know the early folklore of it, because it'll give you a better understanding of what you're going to be up against in that research.
Yeah.
And areas to dig into and areas to avoid digging into, depending on what you want to do with the research. If somebody was to come to you and say, Anna, I really want to go to the LBL and I really want to do some boots on the ground there, what would be the best advice that you would give them?
Number one, don't go alone unless you just really, really want to do that. I mean, I have friends that do that, but make sure you get a map so that you don't get lost in there on some of those roads. There are tons of little roads in there. There's been multiple people that have gotten their vehicles stuck in these roads. If you're going to go back through these roads, you're going to need a 4-wheel drive on some of them. You're just not going to be able to take a car in there, and you're going to have to walk some of it. There's lots of locked gates in certain areas. Your internet coverage for your cell phone is very spotty in there, so you need to be careful of that as well. If you get bit by a snake, there's old wells in there that haven't been covered. You could step in one of those old home place wells and get hurt. I would also advise taking a walking stick so that you're punching the ground a little bit as you're taking steps so that you don't fall into one of those. make sure you have, if you're going to do it at night, make sure you have flashlights with extra batteries, that you've got hiking boots. The ticks are terrible in there in the summertime. The chiggers are terrible. You better be wearing, I hate to say it, but some pantyhose to keep those ticks off of you, because sometimes the permethrin don't even work on those suckers. So
Mm.
I went in there in May of last year and had sprayed down in permethrin and still got like 11 ticks on me after I came back out of there. So just make sure that you're equipped to walk in there, that you know the dangers, that you have a map of the roads to get yourself out of there, and just be careful. Realize the wildlife that's there, those feral hogs, the snakes, the time of year you're going in.
Mm.
Take precautions before you head in. And then spiritually, emotionally, prepare yourself as well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I agree with all that because there's so much. First of all, I think personal opinion is the LBL is not really a good place for a novice to start out at.
Yeah, if you're going to get deep back in there and go off the roads, like I said, there's lots of old homesteads and stuff, and you don't know what you might be stepping into. And if you're by yourself and you don't have good cell phone signal, oh
Oh,
my
yeah.
gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. You're kinda asking for it at that point. You really are.
Yeah.
And again, like, honestly, eh, with when it comes to the spiritual protection part of it, I definitely encourage that, because the LBL can pack a wallop
Yeah.
in that sense. So, again, a novice, I like, if
Mhm.
you're going in there, for the first time, I would strongly suggest you, um, be spiritually prepared for what you're gonna
Yes.
face in there,
Yeah.
because there are things in there that will literally eat you up
Yeah.
spiritually. So,
Yes. Yes.
uh
It can affect some people very deeply. It affected my daughter very deeply the first couple of times that she was in there, and I was like shocked that it did that to her, but it did.
yeah, yeah. There's so many things that people can come in contact with there. I
Yes.
mean, we've talked about the Fae. I mean, just
Mhm.
them alone can be a wallop.
Absolutely.
That's a big how do you do. So
Yeah.
when you're just walking in there, kind of nilly willy and not really paying attention to what if you don't know how to start out an investigation, that definitely is gonna affect the outcome for you greatly
Yeah.
on the spiritual level.
Mhm.
So we've talked for a while tonight. I could go on forever with you about this because the LBL is. I'm going to have you back for a third engagement before it's over with this, because this is one of those topics. This is one of those areas
Mhm.
that there's so much to dive into, and I really want to get more into some of the haunted, and I really hate to use that terminology, um,
Yeah.
some of the haunted areas there at some point. I know Hotel California is one of them, that has had some pretty crazy experiences.
Yeah.
Um, I believe there's another.
Empire Farms is gives off a lot of paranormal activity, and it has barns. It used to have silos there, but they took the silos down. Yeah, and they were remodeling the old farmhouse that was there, and people kept vandalizing it, so they kind of boarded it up. It was horrible. They were trying to restore that. There's a big water cistern that sits out back of it. It's still got chicken coops and a big barn. But yeah, we've been in that old farmhouse multiple times and picked up some things like on the spirit box and stuff. It'll talk to you when you're in there.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I can imagine that you get quite a few responses on the spirit box all through that area.
And we were in another place. I was with War. He's one of my main investigators that I'm usually in the LBL with. But on his spirit box, oh my gosh, this one particular area we were in, it started speaking in a foreign language. We were not exactly sure what it was, but it was a male and a female voice. And that is on my Cryptid Kentucky channel. You can hear what it's saying. It's on one of my videos in that because I was videoing at the time. That was the same night we got strode by that helicopter that went over. But yeah, we just were not sure why it was talking in such a foreign language, and we just couldn't figure out what language it was. I guess at some point we could put it into one of those that will tell you what language it is, but that was weird. And it just kept on. It wasn't like it suddenly did it a little bit. No, this was whole sentences for a few minutes of talking.
Wow.
And we were like, what is it? What is this language? What is it saying? Yeah, it was wild.
Yeah, because that's not normal at all.
No, it was, we just couldn't figure that one out.
Of course, I mean, it's kind of ironic to use normal and the LBL in the same sentence, but
Isn't that the truth?
so much so.
Yeah.
And,
Well, like I said, there's been quiet times too. Not every single time have we picked up stuff, but I guess I just go often enough. I probably have 4 to 5 visits a year out there. It's a 4.5 hour drive for me. So if that tells you how it pulls people back, it's pulling me back.
Yeah, Martin had mentioned that it just kind of like it draws you in. It kind of like it calls to you.
I think it's got its hooks in Jessica now.
I feel that. I really feel that. Some of the experiences that she's talked about, I'm just like, oh, yeah, no. You keep being you and doing that, but I'm gonna stay right here in my safe zone. So as we start to round out the night, because I do want to close us out and you know, thank you again for sharing so much about the LBL tonight. And like I said, I feel like at some point I want to bring you back and kind of deep dive into some of it, especially this farm you're talking about. I want to hear more about that for sure. Because I have a feeling you have a lot of experiences there for some reason.
We have. I got a video on Empire Farm too on my Cryptid Kentucky channel. And it was before they tore the silos down. So the silos are on there.
Oh wow.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. That would be super cool to see. I'm gonna have to go on there and spend some time deep diving. So let me ask you this. As we're rounding out the night, what is a piece of advice you would like to leave out for us? Something, a word of wisdom that you would like to give us tonight?
Just in general or surrounding the LBL?
Actually, you know what? Give us a little bit of both there.
A little bit of both. Well, because I've had so many paranormal experiences in my life, I would just like to say that we aren't weirdos just because we've had these experiences.
Right.
You know, I've had a lot of people make fun of me through the years, and I kept quiet about it. And it seems like now there's more of a acceptance. More people are willing to listen. So if you have an experience and you need to get that off your chest and talk to somebody, do it. But don't
Absolutely.
don't hold it in if it's something that has bothered you and you've had something paranormal go on. Um, you're not crazy, you're not weird. These things happen, and don't
Right.
hold it in.
Right. Absolutely. I think that is one of the biggest things we're all faced with when you come out and publicly admit to some of your experiences and so forth, and we all constantly chant the mantra paranormal unity or unity.
Mhm.
But, even within the community, there's a lot of skepticism
Yeah,
when somebody first comes out
yeah,
with their story, which is understandable because
yeah,
as a researcher, investigator, I try to keep an open mind. I try to stay on the side of caution when it comes to skepticism,
yeah.
but at the same time, until you do the research and you find out,
Mhm.
you being that person to put a hardcore label, on somebody's experience is a bit much, I think. Um,
Right.
and
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, I'm so grateful you came on tonight and talked to us about the LBL and about your experiences. And again, I'd love to have you back again to go deeper into the paranormal side, the spiritual side of the LBL a little more, especially like I said, some of these areas that you mentioned that were hot spots.
Yeah,
Because I
it's
have a
very
feeling,
spiritual there, very spiritual.
yeah, yeah, and I feel like you have quite a bit to give to us in that. But thank you again for
Well,
coming
thank
on,
you.
and I will definitely have you back on soon.
Okay.
Right, thank you.
Well, thank you. Bye, everybody.
Ah, okay, guys, that was Anna, and I gotta tell you, one of the most, to me, intense and exciting interviews that I've had in a while from somebody who has so much information about the LBL. Uh, Guys, be mindful if you do want to go to the LBL. It's very tempting to want to go there and do research. Again, I would not suggest a novice go there, especially by themselves, and go unprepared, especially. Uh, be mindful, be respectful, and remember that you are in a public domain area. It's a place that families go to as well as researchers. So keep that in mind. Also, I would encourage you guys to, if you want to keep getting notifications about the shows coming up, to click that like button and hit that bell to get your notifications because that's very important. And may your journey always be magical.
I've waited for so long to see when you come back to me. Through the wars and battles that were lost, we're born again, it's you and me. The rest is history. Past lives. Past lives. Did we dance together on different floors in 1500 or 1504? We must have been lovers, we must have been something in our past.